There isn't anybody. Okay. Hi, everybody. As I, so to speak, open the door, I'll get going here. This will be round 2. I've never done this part before. My wife did for her book release called Love Sam. Nice segue. And I'm just clicking on people here just to get them in. And it appears that I have both family relations in at the moment. I got to figure out how to get more people. Well, we'll just keep going here. I'm just going to keep typing here. Sorry, everybody. Talk about last minute stuff. Goodness sakes.
He was on a roll and talking about half of his book and then realized that nobody was even on here and invited. So.
I forgot the moment. Yep. All right. Well, we'll go with that for now and see what happens. As I started to say in my last go at this ridiculousness, this is for my book that came out yesterday called Redemption of the Scotsmen, Kindred Souls Book 3. And if any of you have ever written anything, you know that you have to, there's a whole mindset you have to have when you're writing, let alone, a book or 5. But before I get into it, I will formally introduce myself. My author name is Stephen St.Clair, and to my left is my beautiful wife, Sadie K. Frazier, and I will let you figure out her real name. It's not too hard, but I have playing in the background a really beautiful song by Kindred called I Will Find You. It is, for any of you that know that name and the song, it was from the Last of the Mohicans movie that came out in the mid-90s, I believe. It among probably a few other songs, was the main inspiration, so to speak, song-wise for my book. And it's very, very beautiful, very touching movie. Or, well, yeah, the movie was good too, but the song even more so. And I'm just going to let it play out. Hopefully it's not too loud. I'll try and be a little bit louder. But so here I am, as I promised. So I think coming up this fall, it'll be 3 years ago, I started on this journey thing called writing books or being an author. And a friend of mine, April Irwin, is actually who got me onto this. And I hadn't talked to her for a long time. And we got to chit-chatting, and she said, by the way, I'm an author. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. I've always wanted to put out, a book. And she basically was like, well, coincidentally, my publishing company, Solstice Publishing, is putting together an anthology. Do you have anything? I said, well, yeah, but nothing I'm at a point where I could submit. And she goes, well, it's just for shorts, so see what you can do. So long and the short, I submitted it, and it was accepted into the anthology. And my wife and I spent about 8 hours. That's a long time, but you'll understand why here later why it's not a long time. That first one was called Tales from the Wondrous Attic, which it's not really what I would consider a full-length book, but that book in and of itself, I'll just use that term loosely, is actually what launched me into my weekend warrior mode of being an author. And fast forward to, I'm trying to think when I started. I think I started the first Kindred Souls book, Voyage of the Scotsmen, February of 2017. And I had it finished and submitted come that fall. And a lot of you, the all, 4 or 5 of you that are all watching me, that was a long time, really, in a sense that I only really worked on it on the weekends, per se. I worked on it a little bit throughout the week, but most of what we did as authors, we wrote on the weekend, and it is very time consuming, and there's a lot of mental stress and a lot of thoughts that go into writing. And I had my wife read a lot of what I wrote for that first one, and I would kind of keep reading along, to myself, but I would hear kind of a giggle, or out of the corner of my eye, I have pretty good peripheral, I would see her head shake, and I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Honey, you can't do that." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You can't put semicolons there." I mean, that's one example of how bad I was, and I still mess up. And I think even the great authors, they probably have, unless you're just uber smart with reading and writing, they probably have editors that are like, "You can't do this." So, henceforth, uh, all 5 of my books that I've submitted and have published, my wife reads over, except for one that she didn't. Shocking. Uh,
I'm a bad wife.
she did not read it, and she's going to at some point. But so let me set the scene. My third in the series / fifth book overall is out now on Amazon. It is called Redemption of the Scotsmen, Kindred Souls, Book 3. But I want to take you back in time a little bit to why or how the third one came into play. It came from Book 1, Kindred Souls, Voyage of the Scotsman. And I will split the timeline between 2 people. Aidan MacLeod, who is the first main character, really, and Kieran MacLeod, who is his ancestor, set in 1600s. Both in the book were lost souls. They really weren't doing much with themselves, or at least, we all do something, but in this particular case, Aidan, he had just been through a rough split up, and Kieran was just a lost and lonely soul. And the book is really about how people's lives really cross, even if they are from different timelines. So it was my first real intro into what I would call writing a big boy book, so to speak. I mean, you look at some of the other books out there, I think someone's going to say something. What? What'd you do?
Is that better, Carrie? Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
She was tired of looking at the lightsaber behind you and couldn't see your wife. So.
Oh, well, believe it or not, my wife did not want to be on the video, so she opted not to be on. I don't know why. She's the most beautiful woman I know. So, anyways, my first Kindred Souls is really a genealogical exploration of, I would say in a roundabout way, a time capsule. Aiden's packing up his house. What was to be his wife dumped him at the altar, so to speak, and in a desperate act of trying to reclaim what little life he had, he basically packed everything up, and along comes destiny or fate in the form of 2 swords. And he begins a long 400-year paper trail of sorts that leads him to a castle, so to speak, which is in Oregon, which his great-grandfather left to him. But I'm not going to tell you everything because you'll have to read it for yourself. The first book leads to the second book called Trials, of the Scotsmen, where we pick up about a year and a half or so later. Everybody's still there. I won't reveal too much about that because then you won't need to read the first one. But this one is about things get a little bit deeper, and I won't try and equate this specifically, but if you know a particular sci-fi movie, most of us of mine and my wife's era know there's three particular sci-fi movies that came out in 77 and I think 81 and then again in 83 or 84. This is my middle movie book, so to speak, and I'll let you figure it out. It's a little bit darker, it's a little less romantic, but I still left notes of romanticism in it because I didn't want to leave that, but I really tried working on the character build-up because it's important when authors write books in a series and use the same characters. You have to show. Apparently, my Siri wants to talk. Sorry. When authors write, you have to show character development, or it's just a stale piece of writing. And so, with the second one, like I said, it's darker, and I show growth, but I show it's complex, I think, in looking back. So you'll have to read book 2, but I don't really have a favorite out of all three. Actually, that's not true. I think my first one was my favorite because um, it really showed myself, like I proved to myself, hey, I never thought I could do this, and I did. So anyway, we're on to book 3 now. But actually, in between book 2 and book 3, I took a step back because I wanted my brain to rest a little bit because both of those books, prior to the third one that's out now, it was pretty hard to write in some ways because I had to do a lot of fact gathering, and I'm sure there are a lot of like uber nitpickers out there that would pick my book to death and be like, well, that's not right, or that's not, that didn't happen. Not the point. The point is in the depth of the characters, the love, the mysticism, and I like to use the mantra. I've kind of gotten away from it, but not on purpose. Um, I like to write as if I were leading a blind person through the forest. If you're blind, obviously you can't see. So what do you have left? You have your sight. No, you don't have your sight. Sorry. You have your hearing, your smell. You have a whole host of faculties about, and that's really what I tried using when I was writing. But one key factor that I wrote into, and you have to kind of read between the lines, is your heart. And as you see in the first and second and third books, and this is where my wife came into play, is there's a part where I dealt with a particular character being pregnant, and having experienced